Today I'm going to show you how to do basic level select with GUI scripting. So it's pretty straightforward. If you see, like here, you've got your buttons that you can select. These are levels that you're still locked out of, and then clicking these will take you to whatever levels you've created. And then just also as a follow-up, we could do a part 2 that has pagination, but I'll keep it out of this one just to keep it shorter. Okay, so let's get started. Go ahead and create a new project. This can be used in either 3D or 2D. I'm going to keep it in 2D just because it's easier to see on the default background. And while that's popping up, let's take a quick look at what we're going to be doing here. So I like to think of like these buttons here as on a grid. To have 2 rows of buttons here, you're going to need 5 rows of space, or 5 grid rows here. And then you can think about it the same way with columns as well. To have 3 columns of buttons, you're going to need 7 columns of space. So in either case, it's 2 times the number of buttons plus 1. So we'll just kind of come back to that as we're scripting. So, okay, so in your new project here, just click on your main camera and add a new component, which will be a level select C# script here. And then go ahead and open that up in MonoDevelop or whatever you like to program with. Let's start out and let's go ahead and clear these default functions out. We're not going to be using them. To start, let's create a private constant int buttons per row. And the cool thing about this is that adjusting this one and the private constant int rows per page, we can tell it how flexible to be with the sizing of the buttons on the screen. So if you need more space for the names of your levels or whatnot, it should adjust automatically. Let's also create a private static int num columns. And that's going to be 2 times the buttons per row plus 1, as we talked about. And a private static int num rows, which is going to be 2 times the rows per page plus 1. Now to find out kind of the width of each box of the row and the height of each box, we're going to do private float grid box width. And here's where we're going to take the screen width into account. So do screen.width over num columns, and a private float grid box height equal to screen.height over num rows. Finally, we'll throw in a couple ints for the number of levels. We'll just say there's 15 for now, and how many you've completed. Now these will be ones that you'll want to change with, either coming from your server or your some other metadata about your game. We're just going to keep it constant for now so that we can see the main point of this. So we're gonna pop into the onGUI lifecycle method here, and that's going to be where the camera's getting all their GUI updates from. So let's go ahead and start out with a loop. We're going to want to create buttons for each of the levels. So for var I equals 0, I is less than the number of levels, I plus plus. Now the first thing we want to do in here is find out the top and the left corners of the button so that we can use the GUI functions to create it. So let's start out with the button row. And how we're going to do that is we're going to say the index that we're on over the buttons per row. So if it's button 0, that's 0 over 0 over 3, 0, we're on the first row there. Or if it's 4, then it's 4 over 3 is 1. We're on the index 1 row. And then we're going to say the grid row, since we're skipping a row. So like the first row of buttons is on the index 1 row of the grid. So we're saying grid row is going to be 2 times the button row plus 1. And then we're going to finally know that the top of the box is equal to the grid box height times the grid row. We're going to do a similar thing now for its left, except we're going to use modulus. And finally, float left, grid box width times grid column. So now we know the top and the left coordinates of the GUI button, which is what we need to create it. And so we can just say the level name is equal to level plus I plus 1. So it starts on level 1 there. Now to use the GUI button, we're going to say if GUI.button. And what this will do is, like, each time it comes through the on GUI, if you're clicking on this button, then it'll come into this conditional. So we're going to say if GUI.button new rectangle left top grid box width and grid box height. We have all these parameters available already. Then the second part of the button is just the level name. So then what we want to do if we get in here is do scene manager dot load scene level name. And to use the scene manager, we're going to import Unity engine dot scene management. And with that, let's go ahead and try it out real quick. So there we have it. There's our buttons, and you can select them, and if you had levels set up, so you'd be able to get to them. So the one thing we haven't done yet is disable those levels that we haven't gotten to yet. So let's come back over here and say, right at the beginning of our loop, we're going to say if I is greater than the number of completed levels, we're going to disable the GUI. GUI.enabled equals false. And if we come back over here, boom, they're no longer cookable. Okay, well, I think that'll be all for this one. If you want to see the pagination as I showed at the beginning of the video, go ahead and drop a comment or something, and I could get around to that. Or take a guess at it. It's not too bad to add in if you just think about the grid system. So, thanks all for watching.